You go through the same volunteer process and then you whittle it down. But it is time consuming because the legislature, once it starts, they churn those bills out and three of us are looking at maybe 50 to 70 bills a day because the legal department reads every bill that's assigned that may relate to city business, in addition to all the other departments that we do there. So that way you have. Yes.
Okay.
It would be very interesting if you're curious about the
Yeah,
process.
we want to do
It is very educational, but it is time consuming, but it's a lot.
that. May not have the time.
I didn't get
It's
an
not
email
like
this.
you'll have another person to get to know.
I'm on a Texas level committee for HOAs and you just said fun, and I'm like,
Okay, well, if you're not used to doing that, it can be fun. It's very educational.
fair point. It's very educational, then you realize how dysfunctional.
I didn't get an email today about the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I didn't get an email today about the meeting.
You should have a calendar appointment.
This meeting?
He sent it out like Monday, I think.
Oh, Brandon.
I got one.
Well, we got.
I got it last week.
we're
Yeah,
here.
it was on the calendar.
I got it last week.
Yeah, on the calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
5 o'clock.
I call the meeting to order.
Okay.
Do we have anyone for open forum?
Yeah.
We do not have open forum. Okay, so I will go ahead and kill the public comment because there's no one to talk. Did anyone have a chance to look at the meeting minutes?
In the last, meeting before the meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Motion to approve.
Second? Second. All in favor? So done. And then I'll work on to move on to the workshop and turn it over to our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everybody should have a copy of the red line in front of them. And I guess we'll just take a quick walkthrough, make sure that nobody has questions or concerns or wants to readdress everything, and we'll just be moving forward. So, Article 1, the general provisions, so in 1.03, we changed the franchise to 25 years. We took out taxi cab and bus. We made no substantive changes until you get to Article 2. The election and term. This is where we added in language to make it clear that there is an off year. We are open to feedback on this language. Obviously, once we get closer to the ballot, we'll have ballot language, and that's when your feedback is most important. But I want to make sure that this is addressing what your concerns are. 2.04, this was a discussion that occurred at the last meeting that was not a meeting. It was an informal gathering because we were right at a quorum or right under a quorum. So we had an informal discussion as far as possibly revising this to address all positions. We did not include language, but this does clarify the 13 months. So, Mr. Chairman, if you would like to start the discussion there.
So we talked about this and I feel that we should, anyone that serves on city council, if they run for another position on city council, regardless of what it is, should resign their current position. They shouldn't have a position, run for another position, lose the new position and get to stay on their old position, kind of like a fallback. You know, if you feel that you need to run for a separate position, you should step down from your current position, let someone else run for it. Because if you did get the new position, you leave that old position
Right.
open and no one would run for it because you were still sitting there during the election. You were running for the new position.
Right.
So I feel that if anyone, and using a position to an at-large or vice versa, if you're running for a different one, you should resign and let that position go up for election.
Right.
Okay, is that, and just be clear, that includes the mayor. So if someone wants to, is it city, we say city council, it's inclusive of the mayor?
Everyone on council.
Okay, so
So
all
if-
positions, all 7 positions.
Yes, so if anyone, if a council member was running for mayor or an at-large was running for a district or a district was running for an at-large, the minute you run for a separate position, you should give up your current position or let someone else run for it.
Correct.
Okay.
Because you got one person that theoretically is gonna take 2 spots.
No.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we heard talk, right, the next election, next one, number with Joe being done.
Yeah.
Term with it. Some city council members would like to run for that. So I'm just working through it as a practical sense. So any of those people, any 1 or 2 or 3, however many say, I want to run for mayor,
yeah,
we're saying that that's fine. However, should you officially file for running for mayor or any other large position,
yeah,
then you effectively resign, and because everybody would be, for, I guess, 13 months or more, then those 1, 2, or 3 positions also automatically become part of would they be able to put that on the ballot in time?
Yes, because of the, deadline to register for the position and the day to call the election. We would be able to call all of it, so it'd be a regular election and a special election to fill the new vacancies. Now, there's an interesting thing because they are 3-year terms. So if a district council member wants to run for mayor or at large, there would be 2 years left on the term, they would automatically resign. However, if the mayor or the at-large positions want to run for district, there's less than 13 months on their terms, they would not automatically resign.
Correct.
Under current state law and our current ordinance.
So half of them are affected, half aren't, and I'm just saying they should all be under the same,
Okay.
the same one.
And that's fine, so, maybe I'm overly working to mechanics, but if someone wants to file the last day of filing period, okay, they resign, but how does their position become part of that next election, or do you have to wait a year?
Oh, no,
You would call a special election, have a filing period for that then? And again, maybe overworking the mechanics here, but, I mean, the intent sounds good. But would we have to have some language in here that would allow that position, actually, to your point, to be contested during May of next year, or?
I will let the city secretary correct me if I get off path, but we would have the filing period, we call the regular election.
Right.
And if positions are vacant, then we would call a special election for the same date. But
Okay,
because it's based on a vacancy, I believe we have a different time period to call that election. But if we know in advance, we would follow, I think, same ordinance, we would make it work.
okay, so basically, there might be a new filing period for that special election,
Hmm.
but it would still be on the same date.
Yes.
Yeah, same
So
date,
that To
yes.
get to meet your.
Calling
intent.
position,
Yeah.
timeframe, I can't answer
No,
that.
that's fine, so we can make that work. Okay, so that makes, I think I can follow that, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is
And-
my election special, so that.
But there's anything that's about 13 months, why did if you just resign your
Because
position?
state law says 13 months.
Oh, that makes it easy.
Well, it's the state constitution.
Okay.
Says 13 months, so we are required to follow that. So
Okay.
that it does impact only the district members, not the at-large.
So does that replace the first sentence then? Because that talks about candidate for election other than the city council.
Well, that's outside the city. So the first sentence is if a city council member was to run for county commissioner, they automatically resign.
Well, or do we just strike other than that of city council and have we have the same at the 10th?
I would defer to the attorney on that one.
If you wanted to apply to every office, whether it's internal or external,
Well,
I would just, like you said, delete other than that of city council.
yeah, then I think that meets your intent.
Yeah, okay.
But I would probably revise in the vacancy there, I will create it, we filled the course of provision, of the charter and state law, and just say with the provisions of this charter. To make it clear that we are not relying on the constitutional 13-month as far as filling it. Because by allowing it or making them automatically resign, that's covered, but the filling positions would be a little bit different.
Okay, I think. But all we're doing, yeah. So we struck other than that of city council, and then would you add something else you're saying, or you're good with? the-
No, and I would delete and state law.
Oh, this charter, full stop.
Yeah, I would leave other, yes, full stop.
So I,
Does that make
that's
sense?
our internal lawyer doing it.
Well, does that mean effectively, I mean, they would continue to do their duties? Would would their resignation be effective at the end of their term still, or would they actually?
Follow the
stop
end of
doing
the
their
term,
duties?
right?
Right? I mean, is that what we're talking? I'm just seeing all these
No.
people not doing it.
No. So that's a funny thing. Because it goes back to the state constitution and the conversation we've had, and this is where I nerd out, I'm sorry. Because there's generally a holdover provision, so that you get to take your chair until the next, it's filled again.
Oh, right.
But under the state constitution 13-month provision, you resign the minute you state your intent to run.
Meaning you
So
are no longer,
we would then have a temporary vacancy, and our charter would say, okay, council calls together a panel, interview people and appoint people listed there till May.
okay, so they're,
So
okay.
that's how that would be filled, but we also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So could we change that to where the individual does resign, however, they can keep their seat till their term officially ends?
We can do that for anybody who is at large running for a district.
Okay,
State
Right.
constitution would not allow us to do the district running for at large, because there's more than 2 years and they automatically resign pursuant to.
It wouldn't be fair to everybody.
Okay,
So I would have the holdover for one group,
and not the whole.
but not the
other.
other one.
Okay, because of state.
Why I wanted to take and state law out, and then before we get the part on the,
So, it's-
filling vacancies up to address that.
and anyone that's running, they could, the rest of city council could appoint someone to fill the rest of their term.
But could they just appoint the individual who's,
Sure.
I mean, who is?
They could appoint you.
No, I'm saying, could they
Yes, they
just
could.
appoint
Yeah, they can appoint the
person-
incumbent to continue on.
the incumbent to continue on?
They can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking, yeah,
Good question.
you would end up with not a full city count, yeah, how,
Well,
but that makes
The
sense.
thing is also a,
An incumbent.
it's, I'm trying to think of the term, when there's not enough of a quorum to work, you have a reduction of quorum,
So it reads,
a rule of necessity. And that would allow them to take some action with the less than four. The
So-
likelihood of all seven actually putting their name in the
Right.
hat, fortunately, is pretty slim.
yeah,
But,
But, yeah,
and you have the ones that are already at large, if it's an at large.
that's sort of a
like the mayor,
loophole type
They
of
would
thing.
still be sitting there because they're reapplying for an at-large, so we would at least have, if they're not permitted, probably three people that would still stay.
Yeah, I mean, just, they're just appoint the
But it is a
incumbent.
thing I nerd out on because of the nuances.
yeah, now I get it.
It is a fun little game to play.
That's the loophole that they have, so.
And it goes to filling the vacancies if you want to address that loophole. Or if you're happy with how it is.
That sounds like it works.
Felt like it was.
So the intent is, that meets the intent of what you were
The
raising.
intent, yeah, was, if you want to run for a separate position, you should step down from your current one to run.
Yeah.
You know, keep it fair to everybody, because if you get the new position, then the last position becomes vacant and no one's running for it.
Right.
Because they gotta wait till the next election cycle.
Well, there'll be a special election.
Yes, which costs more money.
It's kind of money, which, that's what you do. Yeah, this all makes sense. Yes.
Okay.
I love it. The
Yeah.
genetics there.
So we didn't make any changes to 05, 06, and 07, but because the change you made to the resign to run, did you want to look at 07 again, vacancies?
Okay. If the office of mayor becomes vacant, which I just said would. So you're saying that, and this one said 12, that's essentially 13, you would call it special election. That's
13.
207A
That's 12 months.
is they would call a special election.
Mhm.
And that would cover if they were to resign the last day of the original date. And then you found out on the last day that there would be a vacancy, they could turn around and run a quick turnaround for a special election.
Being that they're three-year terms, this could also be somebody who resigned at a year and a half and they put a notice in and say December that, hey, I've got this wonderful job, I won the lottery and I'm moving to my own private island. And so now we have a vacancy and we have 120 days to go.
Okay. And then they can also, if it's less than 12 months, they can appoint.
And because the time, the 60 days, the B was added in the last charter election, because the time required to call an election to go through the process it had previously.
Sorry, finish on that.
It previously, I believe, had been 30 days, but there wasn't the posting requirements for open meetings and everything. There wasn't sufficient time to post requests for applications, post interviews, and then make a deliberation. Yes, sir.
Out of curiosity, what happens if they don't fill it in within 120 days?
I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't.
I'm just saying, it's a curious
The
question.
roll collapses.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Politicians don't want to run.
You know, I don't know, because that is not a scenario I've looked at. Would you like us to see if we can find something on that? And pick one? I don't know that I have the power to force council. I guess we could make a mandamus action and force. So resident could bring a mandamus.
Yeah, they would be in violation of their own charter.
And so a resident would mandamus chart the council to appoint somebody.
Yeah, that would be.
That's,
weird.
Okay, I think that's the solution. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
how
know.
else would you force them other than?
Someone would have, yeah, if they're in violation, someone would have to bring an action.
Mhm.
Well, it looks like 2.7 addresses both sides, so we're good. I'm good with 2.7.
Yeah, Mayor, you brought up just to make sure, are we missing anything based on our conversation, or you think we're good?
I think you're fine. I just
Okay.
wanted to,
We got their attention.
address the difference between a holdover and automatic resignation. Because there will be a holdover for half, but not for the other half. that make sense?
No, I lost me. So,
Okay, so the way the elections are lined up, year one is district,
you know,
year two is mayor and at large,
so when you said holdover, what?
and year three is the off year. So if somebody who is eligible to run a district in year one doesn't file for anything, they run again in year four. If the district members, and I apologize for using my fingers, this is just how I can see it to explain it. So if the district members decide to run for an at-large position, they have greater than 13 months.
Yeah.
So our code, our charter, as well as state law says, you resign to run. They're cut off like that.
Right.
There is no holdover
Right.
provision. However, if someone who is, an at-large runs the year before, then they have less than 12 months, or 12 months in a day or two a week, give or take, from May to May. So they would not, under state constitution, have to resign to run. Under our charter, if we require to resign to run, they would hold over until that election position. That would not be a vacancy. And so that is the distinction between which way you're going. If you're going from district at large, or at large to district. Some of them will get a holdover, some would not.
And that also sounds like that doesn't quite meet the intent of what you were trying to do here.
Yeah,
I would still have to post that position on the election, but they would be sitting in the chair from that time period, and they would not be required to appoint somebody to fill that vacancy from the time they announce their candidacy to the election date. They would be able to sit there. So the at-large would have that benefit. So you'd have two at-large and the mayor would have that benefit. The 4 district did not.
Okay, so you introduced a new term that was, you were saying the holdover versus resign to run. So the resign to run, you're out. We just said, the way we did it was, you vacated when you file. but you-
Under state constitution, if there's more than 13 months left, you vacate on your intent to run.
Yeah.
But
And
that
then you're-
does not apply, the holdover provision, there is no automatic resignation, there's state
What's the
constitution.
holdover provision? Is that the vacancies? Is that 2.07?
So,
Sorry, I'm just saying,
No,
I
no.
just got this.
so, every position should be full, and so
Right.
until that position is full, like, okay, so you serve on ZBA.
Yeah.
And arguably your position is up September 30th.
Right.
But we don't do our appointments until the end of October or November.
Yeah.
So you're still on ZBA until the next person is appointed.
Right,
You're a holdover. So you're holding over until your chair is filled. So like if we have, a runoff election,
Mhm.
that council member who was termed off or, maybe didn't make the runoff is hold over until that person is sworn in. But on the state law, if you have 13 months or more remaining under the state constitution, you resign on this date, you can't hold over. You are, give me your badge, have a great day, unless we
Yeah.
appoint you to fill the position.
Right.
But if you have less than 13 months, if you're going backwards, you're at large or another district and you have 12 months.
Yeah.
You don't have that state constitution prohibition and requirement, so you get to sit in your chair for a few more months. That,
okay, so is that all covered in what we have here? No.
You
Okay,
would still have the distinction, right?
you still have the holdover
I would-
distinction, yes, ma'am.
I have kind of a, kind of zooming out a little bit. Do we see that like, if someone runs for an at-large, is it very likely that they're gonna turn around and wanna just represent it or, you know what I mean? Do you
That's
see
true.
people?
I would say, no, I have not.
I mean, not that it really matters to what but I was just curious as to how, if
We
you see
have
that in
seen
practical terms,
districts run for
at-large.
mayor,
Okay.
and we had 2 district members run for mayor. There was an at-large in the district. Well, anyway, you had 2 people that were incumbents.
Mhm.
And so it had to have been at large. The mayor was at large, we had another councilman whose district who ran. And because it was an off year, we were 2-year terms, the district didn't win, but stayed on council because he didn't vacate his office because there were less than 12 months. And we had a little bit of, interesting challenges going forward when you have the 2 mayor candidates out there making debates and everything and still have to work together. But the idea of going from at large to district, you would lose a year or 2 years. And all the council that I've worked with, I'm not gonna tell you how many years, 'cause it's more than I can count, I got fingers. But most of them want to serve their full term.
Yeah.
And so the idea of cutting themselves off by a number of years doesn't seem like anything I can see would happen. I haven't seen it go that direction, but I have seen it go this direction because you include them together. So your max number of years is your district and your at large combined.
Okay.
Mayor's a separate office, so it is possible to do 9 and 9.
Yeah, I
Be a
could see
career
people
politician.
more likely jumping into that run for mayor
Yeah.
than moving around within between the at-large and.
Because it'll cut your time down. And I have not had an experience of anybody
Happy.
wanting to cut their term down unless they have another adventure to go on. Most people get on, like the change they're able to implement, like to see the fruit of their labor, and they have a passion for it and don't want to cut short their time.
So I think all in all, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I nerd out on this and I make
Yeah,
it
yeah.
harder than you want me to go.
Good question.
Good conversation.
Okay, so then I did not show any more changes to the remainder of, Article 2.
Okay.
And we picked up the conversation on Article 3 last week, but because we didn't have a forum, I was hopeful that we could touch back on it again.
There was a meeting last week?
Or 2 weeks.
2 weeks ago, we had a meeting, but we didn't have a forum. And so we had an informal gathering and discussed some ideas that will be brought back today for everyone.
I was there, yes.
Yes,
I was there, yeah.
yes, but we did not have,
Of course.
yes. And so I don't have notes of any changes to that section, but we did look at an email.
Yeah,
that you had sent.
so yeah, I'd kind of like to, if you don't mind, revisit or visit 3.04. And you just bear with me a little bit. My thought process here is on the, percentage of registered voters for recall. So what went through my mind when I read this, it reminded me when we talked earlier about, hey, we're good with the elections being 4-3 and off, because we talked about, well, if a 4, or if you could have a quorum, get turned over and so forth. So, well, one of the safeguards we had is we got a recall. Okay, that's fine. So we stayed with 4-3-0. And I also think about how we said we're gonna stay with the May elections because we want to inform voters, but the trade-off is a lower turnout, right?
Hmm.
And so when I was looking at the different charters that we've been sent, I noticed that in those that said a percent of the registered voters, it was either 5 or 10%. When I looked at the model charter, it said no less than 5, no more than 10 is a recommendation, depending on your situation. So, okay. And I looked at another charter and it said 30% of those that voted. Okay, 30% of those that voted. Okay, that's a data point. So I thought, okay, so how does this 15% compare to what we have? And so when I went back and looked at some things, again, subject to verification of my research, I noted that in 2017, 2019, and 2021, which were district elections, right? You had a range of 8% to 22% of registered voters showing up. Okay, 8 to 22%. And then I looked at the at-large in 2022, and it showed about 7,500 voters, which I assume is less than 10% of our registered voters, or about 10%.
That actually sounds lower to me, but we've got 100-something thousand in the city.
Okay, so maybe 7 or 8%.
Yeah, it's just off the top of my head, it's like pretty low.
Okay, and so, anyway, so directionally, it felt like if we had between, at large, 7 or 8% to say 15% of the registered voters, that was double, maybe, who showed up. That might be a little bit of a high threshold. So when I looked at those other charters, that was the math that was going through my head and said, hey, that 15 might be just a little bit too onerous. And so, okay, 5 to 10%. And so then I was saying, okay, if somebody else's charter said 30% of registered vote, I'm sorry, of those that showed up. So just taking that 30%, right? Do the math, you bear with me. 30% of 10% people showing up is only 3%. 30% of 20% of registered voters showing up is only 6%. So in my mind, I was landing around, because of our lower voter turnout, I was landing on, hey, maybe the 5% of registered voters would be appropriate, considering only 10% or so of registered voters are showing up in the first place. If we had a higher, turnout, then maybe it should be 10%. But anyway, that was my thought process of, hey, given those data points, given all that, I think in particular as a safeguard, if we're gonna stay with, the other aspects we have in the charter, that's fine. I'm just saying holistically, this is almost our last safeguard. So should we be looking at something else? So that was my thought process, open to observation.
I'd like to give you the history on this as well.
Yeah, please.
Every charter commission has considered this and its recommendations. So the charter commission of 2011, at the time of 2011, initiative and referendum, the charter was 30% of those voting in the last election for initiative and referendum. The charter committee recommend 10% of registered voters. The voters turned that down. The recall provisions was 25% of registered voters as of petition date. That's what the charter said. And the proposition was to go from the 25% to 20% of registered voters. That failed. In 2016, the Charter Commission recommended, hey, let's try it again. Let's make some changes. And so initiative and referendum, still at 30%, they went from, okay, 10 didn't work, let's go with 15% of registered voters. That failed. In 2016, the recall for mayor was 25% of the action, was in the charter, and they said, okay, let's go with 15. That failed. Interestingly, in 2016, they wanted to separate the percentage for mayor and at large and the percentage for district. So while they wanted 25% for the mayor and at large, or excuse me, 15, no, they didn't. It was 25 and 20 on the books, and they wanted to be 15% of registered voters as of petition date. That failed in 2016. But then again, in 2021, they took it back and they got the 15%. So this is something that voters are used to seeing. So if you want to make changes, it's not going to surprise anybody.
Yeah,
It's not going to be, oh my gosh, what are they doing on the ballot? This is something they're used to seeing. Yes.
Why do you feel it's failed so many times? Why do you think people are not voting for it?
has it always been of registered voters, or one time it was of those who voted, the next in the language was of registered voters?
So
That distinction of
up
percentages?
until 2018, it was, what? So in 2011, up until the 2016 election, it was of those voting in the last, okay, no, this is tricky. So they had different numbers for initiative, referendum, and recall. So initiative and referendum were 30% of those voting in the last election,
Yeah.
whereas the recall were based on registered voters. And the last charter commission said, I can't keep up with this, and I agree.
Consolidated.
And they said, let's make it all the
I think-
same
I
for
would
each
definitely
district.
Yeah, agreed, yeah.
And so that's what they came up with. So it's currently reading as registered voters as of petition date.
For all
So
three.
you could go back to, you can say registered voters, you can go back to the number that were in the last election and you play the numbers.
And
But this is something that your voters are used to seeing. This is not gonna be a surprise to them.
And it sounds like they don't like to go down. Right? Like, when they were, it took them a while to get it to come down from 30 to 15, if I
Well,
understood.
the recall petition to go from 20 to 15 did not. And I don't know why they didn't want to reduce it.
The way I look at it is if someone has done,
Hey, Michelle.
if someone has done a bad job and they theoretically have done egregious harm, hitting 15% is a very easy topic if enough people are upset.
Right, I feel like we just don't want it to be so low.
Yeah.
Someone
What I-
on a win, on small stuff can get, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? I
I
don't.
mean, every
Right,
elected
a small
official is gonna do something to annoy somebody.
Yeah, but when you look at, okay, so, but again, if we're saying we're trusting farm voters. And it's 5%, and again, no district can undo it, it's another district seat, right? So you can
Right.
only,
Right, on the
So,
district ones, it's.
you're
district.
safeguarded there, right? No district can undo somebody else's district,
Right.
right? But they can undo their district.
They can undo it large and they can undo mayor.
Well, a district unto itself can undo it on its district. You
But,
would need a whole at large
well, but
to,
that's the thing, if you had let's use theoretical, I'm gonna use the Highlands. If the Highlands is District 3. So we theoretically could have 3 elections that we could get affected to. District 3 at large and the mayor.
yeah,
So, if our current council member does a really bad job and enough people in District 3 want to recall, I don't see hitting 15% as a problem. What I don't want is, let's say the at-large or the mayor position does something that annoys a group of
A
people.
smaller group.
And then they decide to take over and they do a petition inside their own demographic neighborhood, whatever you want to look at. And then all of a sudden, what was good for 80% of the neighborhoods, but bad for that 20, like, I don't want to trash dump in my backyard mentality. Next thing you know, there's a recall and they're like, okay, we don't want whatever it is in our backyard, let's put it in another neighborhood.
Oh, that's right.
And so I think 15% is, if they've done something to really annoy everybody, that's a very easy number to hit. But it's not low enough where one person with an axe to grind can pound the pavement and then start artificially affecting things.
Okay, but I guess I'm struggling at all the other charters who've gone to registered voters,
Yeah,
and the model recommends 5 to 10. And anyways, and then when I look at our lower turnout in general, anyway, just from that data, it suggests that 5% is not an onerous, or overly easy or onerous threshold.
I think it's too low, it's too easy to hit.
So anyway, I mean, it's a different opinion, but that was.
And you feel like 15 may be too high where
I
it's not,
think
it
we've
wouldn't be
never had-
possible for anyone to.
Yeah, I think if you've not had 15%, okay, there have been a district where you had 20%, that one. But rarely, but at large, when you had 7% of the voters turn out, to say I need double that amount to then trigger something. Well, maybe something very,
Well,
Well, I
historically,
mean, we could go
most
back-
people vote when they're upset.
We could go back to, right,
Yeah.
doing the percentages based on the population that voted, right?
Yes, and actually, I.
And that would address, I think, what you're.
well, I'd probably keep it at 30% in that case, because we said that was a good number.
7,800 people voted, you know, you could get,
But,
you know.
anyway, I just feel,
If it-
Yeah, that's my thoughts.
The last charter commission had me do some research, and I have the initiative, referendum, and recall percentages of the charters of College Station, Denton, Fort Worth, Galveston, Georgetown, Houston, Killeen, Pearland, Plano, and San Antonio, all in chart form to tell you what they had, if that would be beneficial to your discussion, or if you're happy where you are, I'll just be quiet.
well, those added of registered voters.
So College Station was number of voters, in the last election, and their recall was 40%. Referendum was 25% as far as initiative. They wanted 40% of total number of votes cast. Denton was votes cast, and they had 25% of votes cast. Fort Worth is 20% of registered voters. Galveston is 10% of all qualified voters, which is about the same. Georgetown is 15% of qualified voters, but not less than 250 qualified voters. So 15% of those in the last election, but not less than 250 qualified voters, which tells me they must have had an extremely low turnout at one point in time. So I need to say 250 people.
So a qualified voter is someone that's not registered, but that could be registered, is that?
Yeah,
correct?
over 18. No.
So,
Basically, they could. if
but
they
they're
want.
just not registered.
Yeah.
It's not registered.
Okay, so
And then Houston is 15% of all votes cast. Calculated as the greatest total of votes cast for mayor at any city general election held in the last 3 years prior to filing of the petition, which doesn't make sense because all of them are at the same time anyway. Killeen is 25% of, voters in the last mayor at large. I guess they have a higher turnout for that, in case you cancel a district. But you don't want a situation like we're having this May where you only have one district, and then you can
You're gonna base
do
it.
that, and you're gonna base, just one. Pearland is 30%.
of registered or.
Of votes cast,
Yeah.
but at least 150 people, so they must have also had a low turnout, maybe a bond election. Plano is 20% of votes cast. And San Antonio is 10% of, electors qualified to vote at the last regular election, so they also want to make sure you didn't have that. So the numbers are kind of,
They're all over the place, and the ones that you'd sent us, I looked at 5 of them, like I said, that there was 5 and 10 when they had registered voters, so. Anyway, I just put that out there, I think the 15's too high, given our turnout, and I'm also looking for a safeguard against the 4-3-0 election process, so that, anyway, that was my view.
And I think it's where it should be, because I wanted to keep it high enough that if you have legitimate concerns, you can go get it done. I just don't want someone with, and I hate to say less legitimate concerns, but someone that just has a little concern being able to affect stuff.
But, okay.
well, so they would submit the petition and we would call an election, but you would still have other people that can come and vote on that. It's just the power to have us call the election.
I want to make sure that if someone is that, if you have a concern, enough other people have the same concern.
Right.
That makes more sense.
And I hear that. It just feels like, anyway, yeah, you got your view, I got my view, that's all right. We both have different views, so what others think? I mean.
Yeah.
You know what?
So I'm good with it.
Which one?
All right, let's try this. Are we good with leaving it at 15%? I got a
Yes.
motion,
Yes.
No, you
second.
don't motion, you can only poll. You
Okay,
don't
poll,
motion.
poll, yes?
Yes.
I think I see what you're saying, but I think since it's been in front of them so many times and they don't seem to like to change things, I kind of go with leaving it.
Okay,
But
so,
they did change the last
But
one.
they did
Yeah.
change, yeah, they did change the last.
Okay.
I don't know, I would say.
basically got a majority to say leave it as.
Yes.
Okay, I'll honor the process. Thank you for listening.
Listen.
No,
It's very
discussion is
interesting.
helpful,
Very
this is why
Well,
you're here,
indeed.
Right.
discuss this, please.
And votes too, so I say you should say motion.
Yeah,
No,
discussion is good.
and then if it's other task force my board, so you can't vote.
Okay,
Did you have any suggested changes on the actual way to submit and review it? It's pretty much state law and initiative and referendum elections, it's pretty much state law as well, on ballot language, you can't stack a ballot. So that you have to say yes to all, because there's one you know you're gonna like in there, because we've stacked it.
yeah,
And then division two, is initiative, defines what it is and how you do it, referendum and recall. These are just more, procedural following of the election code. But I'm happy to discuss the nuances if anybody would like to.
I'm good.
Okay. And then that gets to Article 4, administrative offices. 401 is my boss, city manager. What would you like to do? I'm sorry, for him.
I mean, I took a look at this earlier, I think, anybody have anything else? I'm good.
I nothing.
It's good
I'll
checks
come
and
on
balances, in
board.
my opinion.
Good checks, yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing further more.
Okay, 4.02, city secretary. I like Ashley, be nice. So you will see that this is kind of a hybrid. So in some cities, the city secretary and the city attorney report directly to city council, and in some cities, they report directly to the city manager. We have a hybrid, whereas the city secretary and myself report to the city manager, but he does not have the unilateral power to hire or fire, as council has to consent to that.
Okay.
It has been brought up in multiple charter commissions, has not been brought up to this exact panel of council, but historically they have said, we don't want to evaluate people, don't do it.
Yeah.
That said, as much as I enjoy my current position, it is your decision whether or not you want to make that change. Whether you want to put that in your report or not.
I'm good, cause
Yeah, it should not be just up to one individual,
Yeah.
I think, it should be up to multiple people, so meaning.
you
multiple-
advise the city as
Yeah,
a whole,
advise, yeah,
so I think
exactly.
you should.
Like a
I'm happy
review,
with
board- like a
it.
review board type of
Yeah.
deal, like the council, you know.
Because your job is sometimes to tell them, no, this is not a good idea.
Right.
It's a lot of fun.
So, yeah,
I feel like a 2-year-old.
It should not be up to one individual.
Same day.
I'm good with leaving it as is.
Yeah,
Okay, police department, it basically says we're gonna have one.
okay, yeah.
I would not recommend doing away with that.
You would not recommend doing away with
I would not. For the fire department, municipal court, at the last meeting, we had discussed changing the term to 4 years, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I felt that if changing it to 4 and then adding a residency requirement, not for the temporary judges or anything like that, but we want a judge that is here, local, understands the
Correct.
neighborhoods, understands Sugar Land.
Hmm.
You know, when he's on vacation, if they have an associate judge from Missouri City staff, or, you know, it is what it is.
Right,
But I think having a 4-year term, they get to learn the job better. You
yeah,
know, they're not constantly like every year and a half going, oh, do I still have a job? I'm good with promoting a 4-year term and then saying that that person though should live in the city of Sugar Land or ETJ.
correct.
Everybody good with that?
Mhm.
And again, the first, this is a
And
appointed position, this is an appointed position by the city council, right?
Yes, the municipal judge and the city manager are the only 2 individuals that currently report directly to city council. But state law says they serve for 2-year terms, and council can adopt a charter amendment extending that, but we cannot do less than 2 years. and there is no residency requirement in state law. That would be something you would add.
Okay. Yeah, residency requirement, I think it should be within, should,
At least for lack of a better term, the main judge.
yeah,
The vacation judges were good.
I
Yeah.
would strongly
Correct.
oppose applying to the associate judges because they run the circuit.
Yeah.
So they serve in municipal courts in
Yeah.
multiple places, and that's good for us.
Yeah.
But they are part-time, and so we would lose
Mhm.
quality individuals if you required
I'm good with that.
the contract judges.
So informal poll, everybody good?
Yeah, I'm good with having a residency requirement for the
Okay.
judge.
Are you okay for 4 years?
As opposed to 3 or 2 or the,
Well, right now it's two.
not 4, is it 4?
do you see any downside in that?
No, the council can, we, I know we've had Judge Landy 20-some years.
Oh, yeah.
So there's pretty good stability there.
And the city council can
I like-
always unappoint, right?
I like the stability
Right.
of having longer rather than shorter,
Mhm.
just because it doesn't make it a political appointment.
Mhm.
You may notice in the city of Houston, every time they get a new mayor, all new department heads,
Yeah,
and things turn over. At least here, we have some consistency, and a lot of positions are not so political, and that you have the people that have interviewed through the process and have the passion for the job, not the loyalty to whoever's in the office at that moment.
Okay.
Planning and zoning, remember, we cannot put development code provisions in here. I know, but this says that we have planning and zoning. It does have to be adopted, or you have it, if it's not in your charter, you don't have zoning. You cannot take zoning away without a pretty significant election, taking it out of your charter does not accomplish that.
So could we just go talk to planning and zoning about?
And, 5.2 ZBA, I'm sure Mr. James has an opinion.
Great provision.
How about that? All right, any changes to those two?
No.
All right, Mr. Chair, we can move on to municipal finance. One, it's not gonna give you much opportunity for changes either. This is pretty much locked down by state law. Our budget year is done by state law. We must have a balanced budget. State law says exactly when we have to move it forward. The city manager must submit it, when they must vote, the public hearing and all that. So you can change it. It's not gonna go to the voters because of state law. Or you can recommend changes, but it's not.
So we're basically locked up.
we're locked in.
Yes,
I'm good with it.
I would say that, can I ask a clarification?
absolutely.
So on 603B, a little bit nitpicky, on that sentence talks about no budget shall be adopted, whatever, unless the total, so basically, I think that's trying to say you need a balanced budget. Except as otherwise provided in this article. What is except as otherwise provided in this article? What's otherwise provided in the article? You see that last sentence on 603B?
Yes, so the last sentence in A, requires us to have a multi-year capital improvement program. So we have a 5-year CIP,
Mhm.
but the budget only covers a year. So we say the next 5 years, these are the projects. So in year 1, we're gonna do, the design. In year 2, we're gonna just wait for it. In year 3, we're gonna issue bonds and we're gonna do commencement to construction. But the only thing that they fund, so they adopt the 5-year
Yeah,
plan, but the only thing they fund is year 1, which would be the design. So it looks like they don't match because we say this is our 5-year CIP, when in fact it does because we're saying our goals, years 2 through 5 is this, but we're not gonna fund it. So year 2 now becomes year 1 the following year and they make changes if needed. So it may be that we have a certain neighborhood is gonna have road improvement and water or wastewater improvement or drainage improvement in year 3. We have a tax day flood and we go, oh my goodness, they get moved up to next year budget and they're now year 1.
Okay, but so the except as otherwise provided in this article is what we just talked about. in-
It goes back to the
in A.
5-year CIP, yes.
So that's where the other business, okay. And the other question I just had in general, is there any audit requirement, or is that, with cost cover anywhere?
The charter does not require an audit, state law does. We have an outside audit company that comes back every year. And, it's required for state law, but it's also very beneficial when we go out to get bonds.
No, I agree, and so I just didn't see it in here, I saw it in the model charter, so I was like, oh,
We could add like.
well, but if it's covered somewhere else, I'm not gonna try to create.
I mean, yeah, if it's already state
Yeah, that's what
law.
I'm saying, if we covered, sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
curious, didn't see it, so it's actually words that,
Question, I love this, so please talk.
okay, that's my question.
I wouldn't
It's
be-
covered elsewhere.
Do we feel the need to add a yearly audit since we're talking about it? No.
Yeah, I think if it's running fine and it's covered.
Now that you've looked at the model charter, do you have any provisions that you saw in the model charter that you think should be in this charter? What are we missing?
I think it's better than one, as far as I read.
Yeah.
We reviewed what we have,
Yeah,
but what do you think we need to have? What are we missing?
Second that.
Yeah. Oh, we can't vote, just poll. I looked and I talked myself in and out of a couple of different things. And it just got to the point where it's like, how onerous do we want the charter to be? And I'll be blunt, do we want to make it so tight that we end up with 10% more admin just to cover what we've added? You know, so far, I feel the city's done a good job of managing costs with admin, with services. And I don't want to end up going, hey, you know, let's double the charter just to cover every T and every I. And next thing you know, we've got 300% more admin just to go, yes, we did that. And when it's already addressed elsewhere, and it's not been a problem. You know, if it becomes an issue, then yeah, but at some point, you just don't create a rule unless there's been an issue. You try to create rules that stop issues, but where do we stop? I think we're good where we're at.
Mhm.
Everyone else agree?
I agree.
Okay, then I will, in my position, I would say that we're done reviewing. You guys do your red line notes, all that
Okay,
stuff. and
So then what we will do is, we will send an FYI to city council that you have completed your initial review.
Yeah.
We will come up with a, draft report of this commission, bring it back to you, you'll sit here and you'll go, yes, no, changes, I don't like this, that's not what I said, where have you been? And that sort of thing, and we'll put together a PowerPoint.
Okay,
We will schedule a workshop time with city council, because we only have one position up for election, the other three have been deemed elected because they are unopposed. We'll probably move this up so that you will not have to sit around until June or July in case there's a runoff, just because there's not a quorum change. My big concern of doing it ahead of time was that there would be a quorum change, and I want whoever's gonna be affected to have the opportunity to vote. So you'll go and you'll do your workshop with, your proposed draft report, and we'll say, yes, that's great, or to say, did you think about this? Did you think about that? If they say, did you think about that? We get to come back and, all join together and think about this. And look at those topics. And then you go back again and say, we have draft report number 2. If they say, this is great, we love it, at that point I say, sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, if you've agreed to this report, and your duties are done. Until such time we decide to call the charter election, and then they may go and say, hey, can we interview you? And you'll say, yes, we had X number of meetings, and yes, we discussed this, and we did it because of this. We'll teach you how not to do electioneering, because that's kind of bad. But we will, there is a possibility that we may have you be advocates in the community to explain your thought process, as opposed to Shay or me, or Ashley, or Clarence or Nicole, who took the evening off, or a council member out there saying, this is why we're doing it. It's better to have the people who made the recommendation say, we talked about this, we looked at the different numbers, you did the research on what you think, or what, the numbers pulled up to see voters and why you picked the number. And you can say, I suggested this, but collectively we suggested this, but you could say, we looked at it. We spent the time. It wasn't, we came in 5 minutes, had cookies, waved, and went home.
Right.
But you have spent.
No.
See, this is something to remember. I didn't bribe you with food.
yeah,
But we will probably ask you all, if we do get to that point, you know, to be public speakers. If people have questions, we would rather it be in your voice as opposed to ours.
and we're in peanuts.
Non-nut, because some people have nut allergies. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. But that would be the next step. So,
right.
based on your efficiency, do
And
you want to meet in 2 weeks or 4?
I would suggest that you reach out to us on yours, when you've got everything where you need it to be. I don't want us to set a schedule.
Right.
This is so short. I'm sure Shay will have it done by tomorrow.
Yeah, so
Tomorrow morning at 7. Okay, we'll be back.
I would rather give you guys
We
the
already have
freedom.
the outline,
Okay,
and we have a running red line.
so whenever you're ready to call the next meeting, let us know.
Let
I
us
want
know.
to put an agenda on you where something may happen. You just do what
Right.
you need to do. I know we're ahead of schedule, which is great. Thank you, everybody. That gives us a little wiggle time.
Are you all available in 2 weeks on the 17th?
Should be.
I told her, I think we have a conflict potential in the ZBA.
And you have 4B.
Yeah, I would have to.
Okay, so, how does, May 1st, early voting? We won't have a room, will we?
No.
The machine,
Yeah.
So could we meet at Barley?
the
Yeah.
So
24th.
just to confirm, ZBE's been canceled for the 17th, so I'm available.
Okay. So how's the seventeenth look for all of you?
Yeah, well, 17.
Yeah.
I think it's 17.
Okay, so we'll have Brandon send out an appointment for the seventeenth.
April 17th, yeah.
That sounds great.
And, if you wouldn't mind, we'll take the liberty to start a PowerPoint
Okay.
and we will drop in these recommended changes that we discussed today, attached to the red line, and we'll have that ready to go. And we can work through that, and then once we get to a point you're happy, and we will try to do it in real time, but we're not always that good. If we can't, we can't, we'll call you back. So.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Should work, so and the changes were minute.
That's why I think
Yeah.
it would be
Yeah.
very easy to
Yeah.
drop in the changes.
We're just clarifying, tweaking, you know.
From my notes, that you have pretty much unanimously agreed on all changes but one. And I just need to say it was a 4-to-1 poll on the petition signatures. I don't say who it was or wasn't. I just say that it was discussed and it was a 4-to-1 decision. That indicates that your voice is heard, but it also indicates that discussion occurred. And so, it's not to call anybody out, it is to show that, you know, there was discussion, that there was no rubber stamp. Do you have any other direction you would like us to focus on or do, or, we're not really fancy graphic kind of people, so we're gonna disappoint you there. But anything else?
Just for my knowledge, where would this be released to the residents or public residents? I think, John.
The subjects.
Yeah, the subject. Would this be like the city website? Would it be a direct mail? Would it be an email, a text? You know, how would we put that information out?
Okay, so that's very good. I probably should finish the rest of the story on how this works. So, once you get a recommendation that council says they like, and I have you sign this report,
Okay,
then council says, okay, you know, we're happy with the recommendation, thank you so very much. Then they say, do we want to move forward with these? Are these changes significant enough that we should have a charter election? Should we hold this off for a different year? And I will tell you, it will not be, it will only be, a May election that has the mayor. So it would be next year or after that, because we're not gonna do it at an at-large.
gotcha.
I mean, at a district, because like today, or this year, we only have one district, that's not fair.
Yeah.
And so, once you have this report from council, that's great. Then you're all gonna sit there like kind of in a pause, relax mode. And council will have, I think last year we had 7 or 8 workshops to the point that I could do this in my sleep. But they talked about all the different changes, and we had some pretty significant changes. I think we had 22 propositions last year, which is the most we've ever had. They all passed, which is surprising. But they will go through them, and then we'll have workshops where I meet with them. You know, are welcome to sit in the audience or watch online or cheer on the background, but you'll not be required to speak, where we go through the language changes. So they said, this is the ballot language. Ballot language must be succinct, clear, plain English, and there can only be one provision per item. And so we'll go through that a few times. So once they're happy with that, then they decide to call the elections, and we have it on there. At that point, once the election is called, is when we start saying, there's a charter election coming up. These are proposition, and we start education.
Okay,
We do not say you have to vote for or against, we just say, please vote.
Yeah.
And, we'll say, like when we did the initiative referendum, as currently stated, based on the last election, this is the number of votes you would need. As proposed, based on the current registered database, this is the number of votes. We don't put any emotion in it. We don't say, yes, do this, don't do this, or we have to do this, because it's just the right thing to do. It's the cool thing to do. We just can only educate. No advocate. And that point, depending on how complicated, which I don't think you have anything complicated, so it's probably not gonna call on you. But the last time we did call on them because of the nuances, is for them to say, yes, we talked about it, we looked at these numbers, and that's why I have that chart. Because we looked at these different cities, and this is how it came about it. So most likely,
We like our previous commission, they did all the work. They did all the hard work, it sounds like.
we're just fine tuning.
I can tell you, because we are allowed to make administrative changes without going to the voters. So walking through here, your taxi cab bus will be done administratively. Changing to 25 years would need to go with the voters. The election term, your language clarifying the 3rd year is off is gonna be administrative. That will not go to the voters. That will just be done. The resign to run, that would have to go to the voters if you wanted to make it apply to both.
Yeah.
If you did not want it to apply to both and just wanted to leave in the additional language that said, that clarifies 13-month, that would not go. So right now, it's the 25 year and the everybody resigns. The, and I believe the judge.
Yep.
I believe those are your only provisions.
Four.
And so I don't know how the feelings will be on the resign to run. I don't want to predict
So
the
if
feelings on that, but
if the council looks at some of our presentation and says, we don't like that, can we just say, no, that's the way we want it?
We can, but then we are subject to referendum or initiative, right? Because we,
a referendum is a petition to have an ordinance recalled from the ordinance.
but if that, so let me check what we said, do we have any recourse?
No.
Okay.
They're the ones that call the election. They decide what goes on the ballot. They'll say, thank you very much for your.
So we could present 5 items and they only choose 2 to go on the ballot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way the system works, I get it.
Yes.
But if they came back and said, change that, we have the right to say, no, we like it the way it was.
Well, and we could massage it and represent it, couldn't we? If we felt strongly about something, couldn't we massage it in response to their comments and resubmit?
And that's why your first presentation is a draft,
Yeah.
because they'll say, we don't like that, have you thought about this? And they're gonna send you back.
Yeah,
And they're gonna say, talk about this some more.
So we don't have to
I say-
necessarily abandon it. If we felt strongly about it, maybe we could massage something and try to, you know,
Sure, but your changes are not.
not, yeah, I mean, I don't.
I mean,
don't-
the
yeah,
only thing I
pretty
can see
straightforward.
massaging is going, well, maybe 4 years, should be 3 years or
Yeah.
5 years.
Because we
Your
don't have to.
25 is straightforward,
Yeah,
and it's residency, not residency, 2 years or 4 years. It's just the resign to run that I think will be an interesting
see
conversation,
what they say, yeah.
but. you know,
everybody's gonna experience at this coming election, so
Yeah.
they'll know whether it makes sense or should be saying something different.
Right.
Because it's not gonna be in effect for this coming election.
This is true, and I think that probably closer to term limits, they're gonna be more willing to do more exciting things. But you always are. If it doesn't impact you, you're more excited about change. I don't know how they'll react to that. The other changes, I don't see them being opposed to.
Okay. Well, we will wait to hear from you.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna see me on the 17th.
17.
Well,
17.
the email, all that stuff.
Brandon will send you an email with an appointment if he hasn't already.
That's all.
I checked, it's already on my calendar. I think he sent like multiples in a row.
He does, he does a reoccurring appointment to lock you down.
Okay.
So that you just get trained.
Right.
Wednesday. Well, if you're done, I'm.
Should we adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah, all in favor?
Hi.
Well, I thank you all very much for your time.
No, speaking of M&Ms, I tried, they make a,